Welcome to Midnight Monster. Today's stories are about true paranormal experiences. Stories to avoid listening to before bed. Story 1. Me and a friend found this creepy statue while hiking and now strange things are going on. Anyone know what this is? Last weekend, my friend and I went hiking in the Catskills, near Sundown Forest, and found this really creepy statue while fucking around in some caves. It has nails in its eyes and a noose around its neck. Looks like it might be old. I don't think it's been here very long, but it's weird because this cave was way off the trail. Someone had a fire in there not too long ago. The statue really wigged me out, but my buddy decided to take it home with him, even though I told him not to. Everyone says that there's devil worshippers that come out here to sacrifice animals and do their spells and shit, so I didn't want anything to do with this thing. A couple of days later, my friend calls me and tells me that he thinks the statue is haunted because it keeps moving from its spot and he keeps smelling weird stuff. He says he can't sleep at night because its banging keeps waking him up. Now, last night, someone knocked on his door, but no one was there when he opened, and he's super weirded out. He thinks he has a ghost because of the statue. It must just be a coincidence, but I think he's actually scared. Before we go set this thing on fire, I wanted to see if anyone knows what it is. Anyone's ever seen something like this or heard a statue causing ghosts? Throwaway because I didn't want to use my main account for spoopy stuff. Edit. My friend showed up here at like 11:30. He's out of his mind scared. Never seen him like this before. I'm going to do my best to remember everything he just told me because it was a lot. But long story short, he's sleeping over because something is in his house. We found the statue on Sunday and like I said, I told him not to take it because it gave me bad vibes, but he took it anyways. He's been an atheist as long as I've known him, so when he told me that something was going on, I thought he was just fucking with me because I know he likes to watch paranormal shows. He always made fun of me for it. It started out just as knocks and banging, but he said that by Wednesday he started waking up in the middle of the night and feeling like someone was watching. This kept happening throughout the week, and every time he'd wake up, he'd smell a really strong scent like pond water. He doesn't believe any of this stuff, so he just ignored it until a few days ago, when the statue moved from his desk into his living room. He says that every night since Thursday, it's moved into a different room than where he left it. He thought it was his dog moving it around because it smelled funny, but his dog won't go anywhere near it. He says that she's actually peed in the house 3 nights in a row, and she's never ever done that. Last night, someone knocked on his door at 3 in the morning, but when he went to open it, there was no one there. His motion lights weren't on and there weren't any cars in his driveway. He said that he opened up the door to look outside and that's when he knew that he made a big mistake. Like he just felt like he shouldn't have opened his door. That's why I made this post in the first place. At that point, I didn't have any reason not to believe him because it had gone way beyond a joke and he actually sounded really fucking scared on the phone. He kept telling me that he was going to burn the statue because he knows something followed him home. Anyways, he stayed up all night and then decided to go to the movies to take his mind off of it. When we got home, he said it felt like everything was fine and that he decided finally to go to bed. This is where it gets super fucked up. He says that when he woke up, which wasn't until like 10, it was because his dog was barking like crazy. He said the pond water smell was stronger than ever, and when he got into his hallway, he saw all these muddy footprints everywhere. Not like shoe prints, but barefoot. All of his doors and windows were locked. After someone knocked on his door, he freaked out and made sure everything was locked up, so there was no fucking way anyone could have gotten inside. Sitting in the living room was the fucking statue which had moved again, and he says that when he started to go near it, he heard someone breathing, like his grandpa with the tracheotomy. He pieced the fuck out, and now and his dog are sleeping in my guest room tonight. I've never seen him this scared, and he even started crying. I have no fucking idea what to do. I believe him because he has no reason to lie about this, because it's way too far to be a joke now. I know that everyone says not to burn it or whatever, so what the fuck do we do? He wants me to go to his house to get the statue tomorrow, but I'm too fucking freaked out to take it back to where we found it in because I don't want to see whoever put it there. Story 2. Why I won't forget my first fire call. For context, I've been a junior firefighter for a little over a year now, and I've been working at a very old and arguably haunted firehouse. Junior firefighters can go on calls, however, we obviously are not inferior firefighters. We provide exterior support and scavenge for anything that survived the fire when it's been put out. My first call happened 3 months ago into my career. I was excited and nervous. I rode with a chaplain, another junior, and 3 interior fighter fighters, not including those in the front seats, those of whom I didn't recognize. I thought this was because there were still people I hadn't met, and that was true. I still only knew a handful of people at the station, so I sat in the extra seat you have to put down. Also on the truck and engine, we put on sound-canceling headsets to drown out the loud siren and help us communicate. They're a bit weird, and you have to hold the microphone less than half an inch up to your mouth to talk and be heard. On the way there, the other junior said something I couldn't hear, so I just assumed he said something about his being my first call or something. We arrived on the scene, and the first thing I noticed after the fire was the crowd, so me and the other junior provided crowd control while the engine showed up, with exterior fighter fighters. I honestly don't remember much from this. The prior excitement had boiled into fear and anxiety. The 3 interior fighter fighters went in, and truth be told, the fire wasn't all that bad, in hindsight. However, I would see much worse fires. Anyway, I'm not sure how much time passed, but before I knew it, the fire was still burning, the house, and 2 of the interior fighter fighters were back outside, as their air cylinder had run out. Then I remembered the 3rd guy, and I asked the other junior how long the guy sitting across from me in the truck had been at the station, as he seemed to have a great composure and I could maintain calm breathing in a fire. I had only seen him in turnout gear, so I didn't know his body type. The other junior looked at me and said, "We only had 2 interior fighter fighters on the call with us, and I told you on our way there that you didn't need to sit on the spare seat." Confused, I approached the chaplain and asked him if we had 3 interiors on the truck with us. He said no. When the fire was put out, we went inside and did our thing. I found no trace of another firefighter. When we got back to the station, I asked the chief about the man. I gave a good description, I think, and the chief gave me a confused but interested stare. He brought me to our off-duty room upstairs and showed me a picture on the wall and pointed to a fighter in his turnout gear along with a much younger chief. He asked me if that was the man I saw, and I told him this. He told me his name and that he passed away from lung cancer in 2000. A lot of firefighters die this way, sadly, and I doubt this was the only one to die this way at our station. I believe he was watching over me on my first call, as I'm sure he did with the other junior. Story 3. The nanny tried to warn me house sitting gone horribly wrong. This happened a few years back in a mountain suburb of Vancouver, Canada. This really happened, although I wish it didn't. My aunt had just purchased a beautiful old home in this neighborhood, but being a business executive, she often traveled around Canada for work purposes. Her 2 children were at their dad's home for an extended period, and their live-in nanny went back to her home abroad for a much-deserved break. Therefore, my aunt asked if I could house sit, as the large home would be unoccupied, and she felt uncomfortable with that. I agreed to this, thinking it would be a small weekend break where I could lounge around and raid their fridge. The drive was about 1.5 hours from my place, and I was generally eager about the whole thing. The nanny, who we're all very close to and was like a second mother to my younger cousins, warned me before leaving that she thought the house was haunted. The country where she was from, the Philippines, has strong beliefs about the paranormal and ghosts, and said that she routinely saw a woman dressed in Victorian clothing by the outdoor pool. She told me to do some special prayers for protection. Being a believer in the paranormal and experiencing things myself before in unrelated incidents, I took her seriously and was a bit frightened, but I figured at this point it was too late to back out. She left and I settled into the home. The first few hours were pretty uneventful. I watched some TV, browsed the internet, and read some of their tabletop magazines. Eventually, I sort of forgot about what she had said about the haunting. I ate dinner, took a brief swim, and then things started getting a little bit weird. I had that familiar feeling of being watched that most people report when speaking of the paranormal. I tried my best to shrug it off and realized I had forgotten an extra towel outside on one of the patio chairs, back when I was swimming. When I went outdoors, the towel was floating in the middle of the pool. This freaked me out a bit, but I forced myself to calm down and watch TV, hoping it would distract me. I was watching the reruns of my so-called life when the faucet in the kitchen began to pour water. I went to turn it off and noticed that a single plate lay in the center of the floor face down. I put it away and nervously go back to the TV room, but sit in the corner with my back facing the wall because I was growing scared, and I didn't want something to sneak behind me, like in a horror movie. From where I was sitting, you could see the outdoor pool through a glass wall/screen. After about half an hour, I noticed the water was sort of bubbling. I went close to the glass door to investigate and saw that it appeared the water was moving, as if someone were doing quick laps back and forth, yet there was no audible splash, sounds to accompany the movement. I also got an overwhelming sense of dread and goosebumps formed on my arms and on the back of my neck. I turned off the TV, made sure all the doors were locked, and sprinted upstairs to the master bedroom. I curled up under the covers and started reciting the prayers that Nanny had taught me before she left. I must have stayed awake for what felt like hours, long after the sun had set, trying to will myself to sleep. I had left the lights in the room on because I was frightened. As I closed my eyes, I tried to calm down. I heard a piercing scream that seemed to come from outside the window. The light then turned off, leaving me in the darkness. At this point, I'm having a heart attack, but I'm too scared to move. All of a sudden, the locked windows start to flap open and shut forcefully. They were the ones that had panels that opened outwards, if that makes sense. Also, at the same time, the thick, heavy wooden doors in the hallways leading up to the bedroom began to do the same, causing loud banging, and I felt the whole house was shaking. These doors would not have been moved by a strong gust of wind, only by the forceful movement of a hand. Also, the opening and closing of the doors and windows were all synchronized perfectly. After about 5 minutes, everything stopped. The silence was almost deafening, and all I could hear was my stifled but heavy breath, and then I heard the sound that sent shivers down my whole body. The glass screen door on the first floor slid open, and then shut. There were slow, methodical steps coming through the TV room and then up the stairs. It was as if each step were taken with intention, loud enough to knowingly scare me. Then the first door opened in the hallway, then the other. Finally, the bedroom door cracked open. I shut my eyes tightly and listened to the footsteps. As they approached the side of my bed, I felt as if a pair of eyes were piercing through the covers at me. Then the footsteps moved to the foot of my bed. Minutes passed, and the presence and air in the room was so heavy, not one sound could be heard outside, not even the crickets that often frequented my aunt's backyard. Then all of the covers flew off me and I heard a loud cackle, like one might hear from a cartoon witch. I bolted up, packed my stuff, and left the house as quickly as I could, only stopping to lock the front door as the key slipped over and over in my shaking hands. I left the screen door unlocked, but figured no one would get into it anyways, as there was a big fence surrounding the backyard, and frankly, in that moment, it was not my top priority. I checked into the closest hotel, too scared to drive home, and spent a sleepless night there. Calling my aunt in the morning, she seemed confused when I told her what had happened, as she said she had never felt any ghostly presence there, but the nanny had mentioned it a few times. I guess she really never took it too seriously. She lived in the house for a couple of years after that, and ended up relocating to Shanghai with her children for business purposes. We didn't really speak of it much, but when I told my mother, she said that she had always felt creeped out there, and told me that once while she was swimming, she felt as if someone had tried to push her head underwater. After that day, I always avoided that house, coming over only when necessary and when others were inside. Story 4. Ursula. This happened while on vacation in the Bahamas when I was 14 years old. I was in a resort, and being the teenage paranormal enthusiast I was, I decided to pack a Ouija board on the trip. I know. I was staying in a resort and sharing a room with a friend, and my brother and my friend and I decided to use the Ouija board. We were messing around with it until a very strong force begins moving the pointer around the board in a circular motion. My friend and I freeze as we were not expecting this sudden change in force, and watched it as it spelled Ursula. The board proceeded to spell daughter, arson, message. I asked if she wanted to relay a message to us, but it pointed to no. I then asked if she wanted me to send a message to this Ursula. It pointed to yes. The message was, tell Ursula mommy loves, which we deduced meant tell my daughter Ursula I love her. I asked about the arson comment, and it spelled I die, which we then deduced that her mother had recently died in an arson. My last question was, how do I find Ursula? It spelled resort. We woke my brother up and told him what happened, and he was just as curious as us. We vowed to find her at the resort in the morning. Meekly, I went up to the front desk at the reception and asked, is there someone who works here named Ursula? I'm not sure what I was expecting, but the woman shot me a look and said, yeah, but she left for her mother's funeral in Nassau a few days back. This sent chills up my spine. I decided to write her a letter saying her mother loves her and is with her, and ask if they would give it to her. I'm not sure it was the right thing to do, but I was stumped. Fast forward 2 years, my family and I go back to the same resort. I'm sitting for breakfast and a woman pours us water. I look at her name tag, which reads Ursula. At that point, however, I'm too shy to bring it up to her, and perhaps she might not want to talk about it with a complete stranger, which is understandable. After this, I stopped using the Ouija board as it freaked me out. Ursula is not a common name, especially with that spelling, and I can only hope that if she did indeed receive my message, it was well received. Story 5. Weird ghosting my family has seen through the decades. Does anyone know a creature it could be? We are from rural Ireland. When my father was younger, he was walking home late at night and saw a white goat-like creature with a woman's head and long hair. It had arms sticking out of its head. It nearly gave him a heart attack, but he didn't do anything. Several years later, my uncle, on my mother's side, not father's, was walking back to his parents' house, which was in the back arse of nowhere, Ireland, throughout the fields. His neighbor had a pushin, which was the Irish word for a male goat, and he thought he saw the goat caught up in barbed wiring, so he went to check it out. He said the thing looked up at him with a woman's face and smiled when he went to free it, and he ran home, and my mother, who had dinner on for him in her parents' house, said he genuinely looked as though he was going to die with fright. Just last night, my 12-year-old cousin texted her dad, and my other uncle on my mother's side, the brother of the man who thought the thing was a pushin, to tell him to come and get her from her room because something was screaming outside her window, and she was too afraid to move. Assuming it was a fox, he went to the window to check, and he said he saw a creature that looked like a goat body with a woman's head. The thing looked at him and bolted. Here's the thing. My uncle and grandmother live on the same lane. My mother's family grew up at the bottom of it, and then my mother's brother built a house on it to be close to her. My whole family maintained the lane is haunted because it used to be a route for the headless hunt. My grandmother saw something on the lane that she refuses to speak about, and I wonder if it's the same thing. Story 6. Something is messing with my son. I have a 1-year-old, perfect baby boy. I live in a trailer so you can hear everything. It's pretty nice inside, but I did take off his bedroom door because I just did. Relevant. So my room is right down the hall. My husband and I were fast asleep, and about 2:30 I hear children's voices. Not babies, children's. They were talking to him and it sounded like multiple children. I was just laying there listening with my eyes shut for a good 2 entire minutes. I really thought someone was in the room. One sounded like it was singing, another voice sounded like it was playful but it was whispering, and the other was kind of just speaking gibberish to him. The moment I opened my eyes, my son let out the blood-curdling scream. He started crying and I walked to his room. He's standing straight up in his crib with his eyes terrified. He's 1. He doesn't talk, but he's good at communicating otherwise. I took him out to the family room, turned on the TV, and he couldn't stop staring down the hall. And at the end of the hall is his room. And at one point, this dark mass was just stagnant there and slowly went away. He eventually fell asleep, so I laid him back down. 30 minutes later, he's crying again, and I can hear the rustling around, which I assumed was him. So I picked him back up and took him back to the couch. This kid is petrified of something in that room. He's always been amazing at sleeping through the night, but lately some strange things have been happening, and he keeps waking up the same time every night. Am I crazy? What should I do? Edit. After I wrote this and laid down for a second time, I saw a shadow person, about 3.5, 4 feet in height, walk past my bedroom door towards my son's room. It was almost like sleep paralysis, but I could actually speak and said to my husband really loud, "Oh my God!" And he asked, "What?" I told him what I saw and he just fell back asleep. I'm seriously shaken. Thank you all for the advice. I'm going to see what I can do. I have sage available already, and I will try that. Edit 2-3. My husband does not suck. Please keep those comments to yourself. He's a skeptic. He doesn't believe in this kind of thing. If it were a home intruder, he'd be the first to protect us, and he would know right away because our place is so small. I don't think he was bothered because I was so calm about things. After this morning, when I sat him down and explained the entire scenario to him, he seemed to be a little spooked, listened, and was very understanding. So telling me to get a new husband doesn't help me any. I came here for support on how to deal with something like this. Leaving my husband is off limits. Thanks. I do appreciate everyone's feedback and insight. You've been very helpful. It seems like I have few options to look into, and for a little while, I will be keeping my son in our room with us at night. Update. So I saged, said a few prayers, commanded it to leave, and did some research. The previous owners are a friend of my mother-in-law's. She stopped by last night and I told her what had happened a few days ago. She called the previous owners and didn't give them any background. She just said, "Hey, Rat-a-tat has a question for you." And her response back was, she finally saw the little girl, didn't she? I couldn't believe it. She knew and had seen her before too. She gave me her recollections of a few of her encounters. She said her husband was a skeptic until the little girl appeared to him as well. She said she would appear in the bedroom nightly and would sit on her bed with them, sing, talk, and play. Then she fell pregnant and it stopped for a little while. It wasn't until about a year later her daughter was born and she started hearing singing in the back room. And the little girl would appear sometimes at night. She told us that her daughter interacted with her for a couple of years until they moved, and she never had an issue again, so I'm thinking she's just attached to the house. My husband was in the room listening to her encounters and never said it out loud, but I think he's starting to believe me now and he's not so skeptical. We had a pretty sleepless night last night and my son was woken up on 3 separate occasions. Each one he was wide-eyed and didn't look so terrified, more extremely confused. I found someone to come bless the house, so hopefully she will be coming tomorrow. He is taking a nap right now next to me, and since I barely slept, I laid down with him and now I keep hearing the floor creak and tapping on my doors because they are shut. The floor doesn't shift or creak unless someone is walking on it. I'm thinking this is just a friendly, playful spirit who's lost their way, and I'm hoping we can get her to where she needs to be at peace. Thank you to everyone for all the amazing advice and support. Story 7. Saw my first ghost last night. He was watching my son sleep. I'm shaking as I type this. We have 2 sons. Our 2-year-old often climbs into bed with us at night to cuddle with my husband. Last night, I woke up with a start, and I felt like there was a presence in our room. When I saw that it was a man, I first thought that someone was in our house and was trying to take our son. I stood up quickly and reached for the baseball bat that I keep by my nightstand. The man looked at me and seemed a bit startled. I shouted for him to go away, and eventually, reluctantly, he dissipated. I'm not sure what he wanted with our son. Maybe he just wanted to watch him. He was waving at him by opening and closing his hands as you would to a baby. I don't think I'm going to be able to sleep tonight. He didn't feel threatening, but I don't like the idea that he was watching my child. Story 8. I'm freaking out and terrified to go to sleep now. Something tried to lure me out into the marsh. Help, please. This just happened about 2 hours ago and I'm still shaking. I live on the coast of San Francisco and my backyard is directly on the marsh. I woke up and went down the stairs to use the bathroom. I kept having this weird nagging feeling like I was forgetting something or something was off. So I went to find my mother. She's a night owl and stays up super late doing gardening stuff and she likes to feed the raccoons. I went to the backyard and I saw her about 100 yards from the back door facing the marsh. I called out to her but she didn't hear me, so I started to walk out to her. Once I started getting closer, she turned to face me with a completely blank expression. So I asked her what's wrong. I was about 12 feet away from her and she turned back towards the marsh. Then the fucking back door opens and I turned to see my mom standing on the deck and she called out to me asking what I'm doing. I've never run so fast in my life, but I looked back to the marsh and I could see the thing disappearing. It looked just like my mom. I yelled at my mom to go inside, that there was something out here. I told her what I saw and I've been crying and shaking. We woke up my husband and my dad, and they think I must have still been in a sleep state and I dreamed it or something. I can't stop shaking. What the fuck just happened? Am I crazy? Did something try to lure me out to the marsh? Must be losing my damn mind, but I know what I saw. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing.